Hi everyone, it's Shalise from Chess, and today I'm sitting down with Nikos, opening my show to talk about his books. Hey Nikos, how are you?
Hi, Sarlis. Love to be with you and to discuss about things that people from Forward Says audience would be interested in.
Which are definitely all of your opening books, most recently Playing the English, which has had phenomenal success. You said you have a theory for why you think this book has been so popular. You care to share that?
Yeah, I think that there is certainly an audience that knows about me and knows about the books from Quality Says, and they trust every book that Quality Says publishes has some standards, and they know that especially the opening books would be rather good. But I do believe that my recent adventures on Twitter, where I am sharing a lot of ideas there, I was not expecting that, to be honest, that so many people would be interested about opening ideas on Twitter. Many
Yeah.
people have approached me actually and said, we didn't expect this either, that this could work, because Twitter or X, right?
Yeah.
People are used, they don't really use it for chess study, but rather for chess gossip, let's say, or other things.
Yeah.
But I kind of created a following there and an awareness about my name. Each of my threads there where I present ideas, they have 30, 40,000 impressions. So I believe that this awareness from Twitter was what generated some additional interest about my work.
Okay, awesome. And the English part, like the English is a popular opening, of course. Do you think it's just seen a resurgence in popularity over the last few years? Because now it looks like everyone wants to play the English because of your book. But why do you think the English has become, people are so interested to learn that?
It is funny because I used to be a full-time professional chess coach, and we had these discussions in the community about, should we teach our students one opening? And there was this old school thought of going really deep into one opening and becoming the expert. And at
Yeah.
some point, I believe it was around 2010 or something, I did a research. I researched the most successful new kids that they were winning world championships, from all categories. And I realized that the vast majority of them, they are not experts in one opening. It's not that they're playing 1e4 in every game,
Yeah.
but they're playing 1e4, 1d4, one knight f3, and 1c4. And they're not trying to avoid theory, they're playing main lines. So this has created, let's say, a challenge for every player today that want to be ambitious to really broaden their horizon and be able to play different moves. And instead of becoming experts and lifelong experts in one particular opening or set of openings, everyone now sees the need to play more openings. And even if you are a natural 1e4 player, you definitely want to understand the other major openings, because this might be better openings for one particular game, let's say. Or also when you throw a few games with not your main opening in the database, it makes it extremely difficult from your opponents to prepare for you. I know this very well because I have been helping players, mostly my previous career, in preparing. And the most difficult players to prepare against were those that were playing 1e4, 1d4, and 1c4.
Yeah.
Typically, you have a few hours to prepare, and this is a night. So I believe that's a reason. And definitely, there were not many books on 1c4 in recent years. So this book kind of filled the gap in the market, I believe.
Yeah. And preparing for opponents has become kind of easy in the sense that there are so many resources online. Like because of COVID, everyone was playing online. So you just go to someone's chess.com, chess profile. So if you see them playing everything, like an E4 player starts playing C4, it does make it a little bit more challenging.
And honestly, I think that you should try all the moves, because one other thing that says coaches do is, and it's fine, it's natural, you tend to show to your students the things that you know as a coach really well and when you
Mm.
were a player. And
Mm.
let's say that you were an expert in 1e4, so this is naturally what you want to show your students. But you should allow your students to play all openings and see what they feel most comfortable.
What
And
suits them.
exactly.
Right. Because you might show them E4 and then turns out that their style is more suited to playing the English or D4 or something. So it's good to explore or give your students opportunity to explore. But it's difficult learning openings. And I think that's my number one question for you. How do you recommend someone should really study an opening?
That's one question where if you asked me 5, 6 years ago, I would give you a definite answer, or I had, let's say, a very strong opinion. My experiences becoming a business coach nowadays and having to coach people outside chess gave me different perspective and a realization that there are simply different learning styles. So a style that works for a certain player might not work for another one. Let me give you an example. Although these things are hugely debated in the education and coaching community, but let's say on generally, we tend to learn in different ways. For example, some people like, or it is more efficient for them to learn by watching videos and watching
Yeah.
YouTube. And some others are not. They want to read a book. Some others want, let's say, first an overview and then to go deeper, or some players learn through experience and they don't want to read everything and go and play. So what I'm trying to say here is that there is not one answer that fits everyone here. And this is, again, something that every player that wants to improve needs to figure out. But we do know a few things that are universal among all styles. This is where many times I disagree with a lot of coaches, for example, where they say in an opening, number one is understanding. And you might see this in my books that I really try hard to offer this high-level understanding of the position, because if you understand generally what you are aiming for and where your pieces belong, then it is easier to find the right moves to get there. But, and this is something that chess coaches say, that this is the most important. Number one is, unfortunately, to memorize the moves. So you cannot avoid learning a new opening if you don't memorize the moves. And I'm not talking the novelties on move 25 or something, but up to move 10, let's say, in every possible reply, or let's say up to move 8, depending on your level, you need to memorize. So if you want to work on the opening, this is the first thing, a systematic memorization of the moves. And when you have this part, then instead of working to memorize deeper and deeper, then you need to go to the high level and really try to understand what you're aiming for. And I think, unfortunately, you cannot avoid that. And I am always perplexed when I see coaches saying, hey, don't learn openings or don't care about moves. Understanding is important.
Yeah, that's all I hear. So your opinion is quite different. It's interesting.
Yeah.
So step
I
one,
mean,
have the first few moves memorized and then understand. Because if you get the first moves wrong, you're never going to get to the position in order to understand.
Yeah, and I'm talking simple things. I remember many times students that I have prepared based on understanding, and the student really understood what they needed to do. But first of all, they had to spend a really long time during the game to try to find out how they can get there. Or many times they forget move number 3 in an open variation, and then they cannot get what they were supposed to get. So I'm not talking about, hardcore memorization
25 move, 30 move memorized.
Yeah, but you need to get until move 8 at least. I mean, so that's the first thing. In my opinion.
Yeah, I love that opinion. I think I'm going to try that out because I've been learning some new openings, and it's always been emphasized to understand your ideas, but there's nothing worse sitting at a chessboard and knowing what the position is supposed to look like, but forgetting what the moves were, like how to get there. It's terrible. It's such a stress.
You can do an experiment, Charlize, and everyone watching. If you have a chess coach telling you, you don't need to learn openings, understanding is important. Ask them, hey, what do I play in this variation in move number 4? Of course, they will remember. Just they have, I believe that sometimes we just forget the challenge. When chess coaches, they do remember the basic variations and how to get there. Then, of course, for them, they understand that it is important to remember the general ideas. But sometimes we forget that there is an essential step before that. So everyone can do this little test. So everyone that says, do you understanding is important? They say that because, of course, they remember everything in that opening and they have memorized up to certain.
Yeah, they have the first step down already, and now they're in the understanding. But it's step 1, know your moves. Step 2, understand them. But again, not the long variations that take you into the end game. Like that's a little. If you get to a certain point and you understand, then I'm sure the moves they make sense. So I'm gonna try this. Every new line I've learned, I'm gonna just memorize over and over. You said there are different learning styles, of course, playing the games and then looking at them afterwards. I find it very difficult to kind of play through them. I'm like, okay, but there are so many different things to remember that one small change just changes everything of the position and my understanding of it.
Yeah, I mean, what works for me is to connect the variations with people and stories. Let's say I really love when I remember that, hey, this variation was played by Kramnik in the World Championship match against Kasparov. And I saw an interview of Kramnik explaining why he played this, what he was expecting. And, when I have this origin story in my mind, I find myself that it is very easy to remember. But this works horribly for some other people. They don't care about where this move was played, who was the player, and especially younger people, they can become good without having any chess culture at some point.
Yeah, but they have computer brains. That's just absorbing information, and that's the new generation, right?
Yeah, but some players like this, and generally, I mean, one of the things in education is indeed, I mean, if you go to a memorization course, how people memorize, definitely it helps if you link something to a story. This story might be one of your own games. Hey, this is what I played here in this important game and I got crushed, right? So it is one of the tips that we usually discuss, in the coaches community.
Yeah.
To connect, when you teach an opening, not to be dry, but to give background information, stories, sometimes personal stories from their own coach, and so on. But this doesn't mean that works for everyone. So we need to be open to different styles of learning. Some players are what we call kinesthetic learners, which means that it works really well for them to play the moves over the board. But there are so many players that don't even own a physical board. For them, it is only a digital board. Yeah. So all I'm saying here is that try to identify your own learning style and stick to that.
I feel like we should write an entirely different blog post on this, like have you learning styles and coaching, because it's so interesting. I'm learning so much from you. And this idea of connecting stories, like games as well, that's a good way to learn openings, to see how other people play it. So if you connect a name with this idea you saw, you're like, oh, in the game, oh, this person played that. It's a nice way of remembering. I'm learning so much. I'm going to try everything we're speaking about here, by the way. Need to arrange my own coaching opening session with you. Do
You're
you
welcome,
have
Ntirlis.
Do you have an example of an idea you've connected with a story, like in a position or an opening line that you can show us?
Okay, let's start with 1c4. So one of the things that I realized that a lot of people were not impressed. I mean, most of them, they were impressed. They said good things about this, but they were surprised mostly. Was that I believe that this is my move order. Was that in this position, most chess books on 1c4, they avoid the move e4, or let's say they avoid the transposition to the king's Indian. So
Yeah.
this is an opening that
No, just move the rook. Yeah, because it's all practical. Okay.
So this is a main line opening from 1d4, the king's Indian defense, right?
Yeah.
And many people were not expecting in an opening book on 1c4 to transpose to 1d4 opening. Many authors actually say here that, okay, I mean, the best line is to transpose to the main line king's Indian, but let me give you an alternative that, you know, you can avoid some theory. I really believe that the king's Indian is a great opening and it should be treated with respect. I used this opening myself in my correspondence games to become an IM. I did my most wins with the black pieces with this opening.
Oh.
So in the book, actually, I am giving what I figured out quite a few years ago when I was playing the opening as black, what is currently, let's say, one of the best lines for white. So let me. So
you played against this, and that's how you knew it was good for white.
Yeah, but I'm getting to the story in a second. So before, this is the bayonet. This is an opening that was made very popular in the 90s when Kramnik was killing everyone with this opening. Actually, legend says, and not just legend, actually Kasparov has written about this, that this is the reason that Kasparov himself, in the 90s, who was the GOAT, back then at least, stopped playing the King's Indian because they knew an uprising challenger, Kramnik, and a whole generation of players have started playing before. By the way, when we talk about chess understanding, why it was, I mean, the King's Indian is being played since the 50s in top grandmaster level. Why we're saying that before seems to be surprising, and it was not till the 90s became very popular. The reason is that what black wants to do now, and black wants to move this knight, let's say here, here, or wherever, and push the f pawn, right? So people with white, they were saying, okay, what is the most active place for this knight to be? Definitely here, in order to play f5. So if we play white, anyway, we need this knight around here to help to the attack. So the first thing we should do is to play this move or this move, which moves the knight towards the queen side, where will be the future operations for white. And at the same time, it stops this knight coming here, right? Yeah. So, and the other general idea here, let's say pro-Kramnik, the chess understanding before Kramnik proved that this before move was really good. The general understanding is that white wants to play c5, and they don't really need this move before in order to play c5. They don't need this move. So the main line was something like that, and here, and you see that the knight can go here, and the pawn can go here, and white can open the c line very fast, and if this c line is opened, you know, things like that would happen. Okay, so before is very surprising because you don't need this move to play c5, and you allow the knight here. And Kramnik was playing this move, and the idea is that if knight f4, the bishop can go here, okay? And if f5, now the new opportunities for white is to play this kind of moves when that's why white discovered that they shouldn't move the knight, because now they can play something like this.
Yeah.
And here now comes, also to go to e6 with the knight here and so on. So this is very well known theory, right? But I discovered quite a few years ago when I was playing these lines for white that here the one of the top lines of the computer was a4, which made no sense. Okay, it makes sense.
What's the pawn doing? Yeah, but it's not helping in your c5 plan.
Yeah, and actually, if you leave the engine running, it says that the next move for white here is this. And again, it's things are happening fast, and you waste 2 moves. And everyone thought, oh, stupid computers. But then I realized that actually this move has a point, because when you set up your position like that in the queen side, really fast, you can play here and here, and here and here, and everything blows up. Yes. So this move, putting the pawn on a5, actually makes sense if you see this in your mind.
Yeah. Yeah, alone it's like what? But if you see the follow-up moves, it makes more sense.
Yeah. And if you try to say, okay, how black is going to take advantage of the time, you realize that, okay, if they take here, now we can play here, and we take on e4 with the knight. This doesn't seem like a big problem. Or let's say, if here, maybe I can put it.
Yeah, we just need a pawn.
Then it's the same thing. We can still play here, and again, if takes on e4, we can play knight to g5. So no big deal. So actually, it is not that black is threatening something incredible, and we can still move the pieces. So, but I was maybe the only one that had discovered this, and maybe I had played this once or twice in my own correspondence games. When this tournament happened, the online tournament called Mr. Dodgy Invitational.
Yeah.
And it is the second edition, I believe. And Anis Giri played here against Korobov, who is a very dangerous Ukrainian player, and played the King Sidon against him. And Giri played exactly like this. And actually, Korobov did the plan like this, trying to attack, and Giri played here. And now we see why the knight standing there actually makes a lot of sense, because it doesn't allow black to continue with the attack. And in order to do that, black needs to do something like this, and it will take quite a lot of time. And in the meantime, white can prepare their attack, and at the same time bring the rook from the third to defend.
Yeah.
So that was a brilliant game, won by Giri. So I started this chapter with showing this game and all the ideas behind this game, and many people were impressed, and they said, "Oh, and if Giri plays that, then that's a great opening."
But also a nice way for them to remember this game and this idea, and even this h4 and leaving the knight on f3, because that's something that can get lost in memory, keeping the knight there. But seeing this makes you understand why.
And not only that, when you study with the engine, here, if you turn the engine up, the engine very frequently will tell you to play knight d2 and put the knight to c4. But if you remember that, hey, my idea actually is to keep the knight there for quite some time, and I don't really need this knight in order to open the queen side, then you can navigate the engine lines, because there are many engine lines that keep the knight there and they say it is good. And there are some other engine lines that say knight d2 is also good.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you remember this concept, then it is easier when you study with the engine and honestly, you should do. Another thing that I disagree with a lot of coaches here. A lot of coaches say, yeah, don't open the engine, but this is a bit weird. If you have a tool that is can give you immediate feedback and immediate advice on anything, then of course you should use this tool. Just you should use it in a way that makes sense for you. Yeah, I was saying before, and you said you're quite interested to learn more about that, how to use engines when you study openings, right?
Yeah. Because people say you shouldn't use the engine for chess, like you should use it later. I guess that's more chess analysis as well. But as you said, the engine is such a powerful tool that anyone really has access to. So what's the best way to use it?
I'm quite sympathetic towards these opinions because their intention is good. When we say to someone, hey, especially to young players, it's better not to use engines when you study openings. And the reason is that the engine can distract you from your learning objective, right? But when you say don't use engines when you study openings, it's like being in a super fancy gym with all the equipment and say, hey, don't use all this equipment, but start doing only push-ups and run around. I mean, I would say it's better to understand what are the advantages and disadvantages working with engines. And another thing I always believe that it is, we can test, we can be critical against a hypothesis or an opinion is what do the top guys do? If we knew that, top guys don't use engines when they study openings, then yeah, that's something that probably works better. I'm not saying that what works for Carlsen or Nakamura will be working for me and other players, but it's an indication. Anyway, so how to work with engines? Yeah, the main thing is not to learn to understand how to use an engine as a tool that gives you feedback and not as a tool that teaches you or guides you and so on. A chess engine is a powerful tool, but still, even nowadays that engines are really incredible and very powerful, they can be mistaken or they don't understand where you want to go. So the feedback that will be giving you can really distract you. Let's say that you know that you want to play a position with an IQP or where you want to attack on the king side. The engine might tell you, hey, you know something? Yeah, this move that attacks the king side is pretty good, but there are also these 5 moves on the other side of the board that are good as well. And honestly, the move that you want to play is plus 0.20, which is, or plus 0.30. And there is another move, which is plus 0.25. And it is very easy to get distracted and say, okay, plus 0.25 is better than plus 0.20. So this is what I need to do. And the whole thing about chess evaluation is a very sensitive topic. I would say don't trust the evaluation of that. The evaluation that you see in a chess engine is based on what we call, what computer geeks like me call principal variation. So it is what the computer engine believes that it is best side by both sides based on millions and millions of calculations. And it attaches a number on this evaluation. Let's say it says plus 0.25. And the move that you want to play is plus 0.20. Actually, what correspondence players also know is that if you help the engine and actually examine the principal variation, what the variation gives, this is 100% certain that this will change a few moves down the road. So you can take the line that the engine will say, that's why this line is plus 0.20. And if you play it a bit, what the engine recommends, you will see that the engine suddenly changes opinion and it says, oh, now it's plus 0.22 with these moves and not the moves that I told you before. That's totally fine. This is how the engines work. that's why we shouldn't trust the engine in a certain position when the engine is saying plus 0.23 here, plus 0.22 here. We shouldn't trust that much. We should trust an evaluation if an evaluation is plus 0.20 and an evaluation in another position is 0, let's say. Yeah, there might be some difference. But the problem these days is that when the engine can distract you with many moves that have similar evaluations or even higher than moves that achieve your objective.
Yeah.
And by looking at that, you might get distracted. What you need to do when you have a session with the engine is trying to understand where you want to go. Let's say have a game in your mind that developed in a certain way, let's say a model game, and try to understand how to get to this type of position by using the engine to give you immediate feedback is if certain moves are good or bad on the tactical level. And so it's you trying to guide the engine and use it as a feedback tool rather than letting the engine guide you. And usually the areas where the engine will guide you are good for computer chess and not so much for human chess. That's the problem.
Okay, so instead of asking for the engine for the move or the plan, you give the engine your moves and your ideas and you kind of confirm it with the engine instead of depending on it.
Yeah, and always trying to have an end goal in mind.
Yeah.
Okay, your end goal might be, I want to understand what the engine is giving this position, what the engine is saying as best play for this position. If your end goal is this, then it's fine. But usually we need to have a model game in our minds. Something that my good friend Jakob Ogert taught to me, and it helped me immensely when I was working in chess, was trust humans. Humans are not idiots. I can hear this in Jakob's voice in my head.
Yeah.
So, for example, that's why I'm saying have always a model game in your mind. Let's say if Caruana played against Carlsen, a game in the Spanish in a certain variation, and you like this game, you feel like, hey, I would love to play the position that Caruana got in this game, then have this in your mind and work with the engine how to get there and work out the details. Because those players, they chose the moves that they played in the game because they had a reason. The engine might disagree, but this doesn't mean that those players were idiots.
They obviously put a lot of work in their chess, like their opinion has some weight.
Exactly. So we tend to underestimate, to be honest, human players when you work with the engine. And the other thing is that you should always have a good database of human games. And if you see that the engine in one position is preferring something where the humans don't play, and they usually prefer another line, then you shouldn't be skeptical against the humans and believe that, hey, all these players, they didn't have stockfish. Of course they did, and they chose not to play the position that the engine gives. So once again, humans are not, they might have discovered that if they play this move, they will go into a forest of variations and a position will be very difficult to handle, and they prefer something simpler. So I believe going back to trusting humans a bit more, and that's one of the traps when you work with the engine, you think everyone is doing mistakes all the time.
Or when you watch live games and you have the engine next to you, you're like, oh, how can Caruana play this move? Because the engine takes it down, but human thinking is different.
Yeah, it's what students of philosophy do wrong many times. Okay, I will not let the discussion distracted by that, but when you start reading philosophy, you see these great thinkers, and they said this, a certain quote, let's say, by a big thinker or philosopher, and you think that this is philosophy, what they said. No. The good thing when you study a philosopher is the process of thinking that led them there. So when you see a game, when you see a move played by Carlsen, you don't actually care if this move is good or bad. Of course, Carlsen might have missed a few details in some tactical details in the position, but we need to understand the process of thinking why Carlsen played this move or Caruana. Obviously, because they had this in mind, and this is what they wanted to accomplish.
Yeah, right. And then that actually makes me question studying older games, like from back in the day of, original world champions who didn't have engines. That could be a good way to confirm what you're saying now, because they didn't have anything to rely on. So their thought process, trusting the human mind, is going through their games, seeing how well they did. Because I think a lot of people, prefer learning games from today because it's backed up by engine analysis and it's spot on. Of course, there are inaccuracy in Morphy and Tull's games, but that's human thinking. So there's a lot to learn from there, from how they thought without the computers, right?
Oh, the best learning material and training materials have released are Grandmaster games from the 90s. You will be surprised. Pick a year, I don't know, 1992, and pick 2 top tournaments, and pick some grandmasters like, I don't know, Spielman, Tivyakov, and see the games that they played against each other. They did have some computers. They were not stupid at all, but if you study a middle game, let's say, and use this as a training material, you will be surprised. Yeah, this is usually a secret that many coaches know to analyze top grandmaster games from the 90s. I mean, not the really well-known ones like Kasparov, Karpov, and so on, but let's say those that were top 20, top 30 grandmasters. Yeah, and analyze the way that they were playing. You will see incredible fighting chess, a lot of ideas, calculation, the positions they were playing. And exactly because they didn't use engines that much to get there, you will see more fighting positions and more practical positions.
I'm just adding this to the list of like coaching tips you've given us in this video. Like there's a lot of solid gold ideas here.
Honestly, most of these are not my ideas, to be honest. I'm like a medium of transferring these ideas that I know that many others are using.
Yeah, it's great. And it's, of course, used in your books, right? Everything you're talking about, your method of teaching is obviously really good. So your way of teaching openings is, just based on how you've been today in our video, I can just completely recommend you as the person to learn openings from, because you speak so clearly and you give ideas so clearly that even I don't even play the English or against King's Indian, and I would be able to kind of go into the bayonets just based on how you've approached that today. So thank you very much. You have so many books on forward chess, playing 1e4, e5, Tarrasch, French, playing the English most recently. Do you have a favorite?
It's like asking a parent which is their favorite child. It always in my mind is the first and the last, always. I know many things that I did. I mean, I love the Tarrasch book because it still stands. So if someone asks me, hey, I want to learn the Tarrasch defense, I would say, yeah, get my book. And with a database and stock fees, you can fill in a few gaps. It still helps you understand the opening. And obviously, I have in mind the endless nights that I spent for the playing 1c4 book and the editing process. One of the reasons why quality chess books are of high quality, with all their mistakes that might happen, and we did some mistakes with the playing 1c4 book, like forgetting a whole chapter to include there. By the way,
but you added it now, right?
Yeah, we added that. Yeah, so that is the editing process. So there are 3-4 grandmasters looking at the material, and when I write a book in quality chess and I'm working with the editors there, our mission is to refute each other's opinions. So their mission is to take my book and prove that I'm an idiot, basically. That what I say
That's a cool
is completely
job.
wrong.
Yeah.
Actually, this is something that Carlsen has said in an interview, that when he's playing a game, he really tries to prove that the other person is an idiot. Someone might get distracted about the language here, but the idea is to be critical of
Yeah.
your assumption. And when they edit something in my book, or if they share an opinion that is different, I'm trying really hard to prove the opposite. But it's a process, not to prove that you are right, but really try to understand, am I right here or wrong? Should we go to this direction or not? Yeah, so trying to be critical, basically. And Quality Says does this in all of their books. And that's why the end result might feel that it is of a higher quality. I wish on my own that I could be able to write such a books, but the editor's jobs in Quality Says really make the book much better than the original work of the author. By the way, Charlize, and this is the first time I say that, I'm writing a new book, which will not take 5 years to get out as the one before.
Yeah, I'm excited. Cool. So we'll wait for that announcement from Quality Chess. Of course, we'll probably have it on Forward Chess when it's released. So, and then we'll have another call, another interview where you can tell us all about this new book and the lines that you go through.
I would be happy, especially if the audience likes this.
Of course,
this video that we're recording now.
Yes, no, I know they will. But thank you so much for sitting down with me today. I learned a lot. I'm sure the audience learned a lot as well. I'm actually, so I just want to go start learning some more chess right now. Start preparing for my next tournaments and my openings. But yeah, do you have anything else you would like to say? Tell the audience.
Try to understand the reason that you are playing chess and try to remember why you came to chess. And you will discover that it is because of the love of the game, basically, and the love of studying and going through the games of the great players and understanding the ideas. For me, chess is very similar to philosophy. And I would say that all chess players should become philosophers as well. It's a very similar learning journey. And actually reading philosophy can help you in your chess. That's a hypothesis that I have that I maybe need to prove at some point in the future. Be social, discuss with your friends in an online community. Go on Twitter, find me, find Forward Chess.
Follow, yes, we'll link your Twitter.
Follow you, Charlize, on Instagram and in Forward Chess social, and share your experiences. So what I'm trying to say is that if you have a question, or if you went at the pub with your friends and play a few blitz games and a position appeared that was in my book, go to the Forward Chess Twitter, put a question there, and let's discuss it. Let's have some fun together in the process. Be a bit more social. And this helps also for, it will be more fun and it will help you learn a bit better. That's my advice.
Yeah, have a community, have a chess community. And there's a big one on Twitter, especially on your profile. Thank you very much. Yeah, we'll see you next time. Definitely for another video, another blog post. So much content and things to discuss from you.
Thank you, everyone.